It's going to be a very, very intense journey.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 66 of Frame Skip, your weekly podcast that I don't know why you're listening to it, but hopefully you enjoy it. My name's Austin Eller. I'm hosting this episode. I'm joined, as always, which is, I think, actually true this time for the most part, by George.
Cam Newton.
Is it still Cam Newton Loftus?
I'm still riding Cam Newton, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, although there were some impressive debuts from some new rookie skill position players, so I might be changing my name soon. But then also, I got friends who were worried that their team would draft Mac Jones, and they sent me a whole bunch of, questionable articles about his character. So I'm holding off on George Mac Jones. Probably not going to be George Mac Jones Loftus anytime soon. But Cam Newton, ride with him.
Okay, so I actually need to back up because Andy just informed me that there's a better nickname for you now after last week.
Okay,
which is George and the Giant Peach.
Oh, that's right, George.
So
I like that.
We're gonna go with that one.
My nickname is a Terman because someone can't read. Like that's because someone else doesn't know how to read. Was it Seth?
Yeah, it was me because I thought it was George and the Giant Peach, not James and the Giant Peach.
So speaking of giant peaches,
God, you hot
Seth. Idiot. Seth, I don't. What in the world is Seth's nickname at this point? I don't even know.
Big fat scat.
Seth, the big fat scat himself, Slakehouse. How's it going, Seth?
It's going pretty well, man. I'm feeling like a silly goose today. Just a big old silly goose, ready to get some shenanigans going.
I was thinking Seth sweater chest Slakehouse. Slakehouse. Do you have a hairy chest? You look like you'd have a hairy chest, but also I wouldn't be surprised if you were just otter balled under there. Oh, there.
I got a lot going on down here. All right,
it's cool. Your chest hair is doing the thing where it's like reaching up to like your neck.
Yeah.
Where it's like grasping, like get me out of here, trying to connect to your beard.
Here's like an interesting thing about me. I get a lot of belly button lint because the orientation of my hair on my stomach goes towards my belly button. All of it. You think it would go in one direction, but it doesn't. So like whenever I'm moving around throughout the day,
like a black hole.
Yeah, it's just getting constantly sucked in there. Yeah, it's just constantly getting sucked in there.
It's like the teeth on the Sarlacc pit. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It can only go one way. You know,
you think if stuff falls through there, it can travel through time or like past dimensions.
Maybe. Yeah, who knows? Who's just on the side of that bad boy?
So I'm assuming Innie, right? You working with Innie? Okay.
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
What about you, George?
I'm also an Innie.
Okay.
I got like a nice little balloon knot inside that Innie.
Not the usual term for a belly button.
What do we call it? What's it called?
Usually, a balloon knot is
a butthole. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's a butthole.
but
chocolate starfish.
Yeah, but like it looks like an actual like I don't know what else to call it. Like it's one of the when like you see something so perfectly named, you're like, oh yeah, that's the name.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Or like a reservoir tip coming out of the center of my belly button.
There you go.
What a great way to start this podcast.
Right, now that no one's listening, let's talk about stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about belly buttons. Your weekly belly button podcast right here, folks.
Woo!
Talking about fun stuff here, Seth, I hear you have something you'd like to share with us that seems to be something.
I didn't know we were starting out with this, but I'm so glad we are because it's been on my mind all day that I just got to tell this story on the show. This is a classic Seth Slakehouse story that I had forgotten in the depths, like the deep parts of my brain. It was completely gone. And for some reason today, I had just remembered. And it popped in. I was like, I have never told this story on air before. And it's great. So, if you will, gentlemen, take a time ship back to the year 2011 with me.
We go into Seth's belly button.
Yeah, we'll fall into your belly button.
This is
that's the sound
this
of the
is senior man. Yeah, it was 2011. This is senior year, prime time Seth. This is like black belt, like grand champion, football player, wrestler. I'm in the gym every day. I'm super in shape, very strong, and I'm dating this very conservative Christian girl.
So sorry, Apex Seth is what you're saying.
Yeah, Apex Seth, like
Okay.
prime Seth. And I'm dating this very conservative Christian girl who wanted me over winter break to go to this, like, it's this local camp called Camp Susquehanna, but it's like a very Christian, like, summer camp thing, right? And they had this 2-week program. Maybe actually no, it was just one weekend. It was a weekend. It was called Blast, and it was for kids that were like, I want to say like 16 to 19 or something like that, late teens. And it was supposed to be like more of like a late young adult type experience, but once again centered on the super Christianity. It was like really lame. I was like just dying to get out of there. And on the second, there was 3 days. On the second day, they just played this like pit game where they smacked the ball, and it was like kind of interesting. And they wanted me to join it. And I was like, nah, I'm good, man. I was like, oh well, we got something tomorrow that you're gonna love. It's called the TP Trot. And now I gotta set the stage for you guys. All right, so this
take us to Camp Susquehanna.
Susquehanna. Just
you.
Camp Susquehanna.
Okay.
This is a camp out in the middle of nowhere, and these aren't like your Midwestern farmer wrestler Christians, right? These are like I've been homeschooled my whole life, and I wear a pen protector, right? Like, you know, like they've never seen conflict in their whole life, and they wear probably high-waisted jeans that show their socks. These type of nerds, right? And they have this thing called the TP Trot, and what it is they have a gas can on top of this mountain, and it's a loop, and at the bottom, all these kids fight it out, and like get in like this somewhat of a brawl to see who carries the gas can over the finish line. And I'm listening to this be explained, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, are you guys serious? Like they're like, oh yeah, no punching, no kicking, but you're allowed to just take him out, you know? Like I absolutely take him out. And I'm like, what? And like I'm not joking. Like these guys are not like, they're athletic. Like some of them are very clearly athletic, but they are not like competitive guys.
How many weight classes below you would you say the average person there was?
I'm probably like a solid 250, and they're probably like 180 and below.
Yikes.
Okay. Well, no, if I remember correctly from the pictures, you can tell there was like a couple bigger guys.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. They weren't these type. All right.
No, it's just I know you said karate, and they're like, you can take them out, no punching or kicking. Yeah. And you're like, okay, but like I'm one half of them more than them. Like, yeah.
Well, like you gotta remember, I was also like a football wrestler, like judo, jiu-jitsu, like I'm very much a physical contact kind of dad at this point in my life. So they're like, yeah, so you can just take whoever out you want, and at the bottom, we're trying to impress the girls. All right, so this is a co-ed camp, and their whole thing was they're trying to impress the girls at the bottom at the finish line. But what it turned out was that they actually already had a winner picked. The whole thing was a farce, and they were just putting on an act, and that this guy was going to win. It was going to be like a thing, but they weren't pretending to take each other out. That was made very clear to me, right? So what we were supposed to do was all just race back down to the bottom of this loop and just beat the shit out of each other.
Good save.
Until this kid crossed the finish line. All right. So, and I gotta share the pictures with you guys after. What ended up happening was I'm not a cardio type of guy, right? And this is like a long trail to the top of the mountain, grab the gas can and back. So we take off. They immediately start outpacing me. And I'm like, okay, this is a problem. So instead of running up the mountain, I cut right across the field and hide behind this barn, right? Where I know the trail comes back around. No. There's like another guy with me, right? Like we decided, like, screw that. We're just going to cut across down.
System. Yeah.
You're like the bandits in like a Final Fantasy game.
So we cut across, and we're just waiting for these guys to come down. And we waited for a while, by the way. Oh, by the way, also, this takes place January 2nd. It's the middle of winter in Pennsylvania. Okay. There was no snow on the ground, but it was the middle of winter. And it's very cold. So these guys finally start coming down, and we're at the bottom of the field, and we just ambush them, right? And there's no teams. It's every man for himself. And by every man for himself, I mean, it's Seth versus like 15 other guys. All right? Because I had no interest in this gas can. It was open season on these nerds. You just want
to beat people up, yeah.
It was open season on these nerds, right? Like, so, like, I think it was supposed to be funny for the girls, because, like, you come down, and they're playing the chicken dance music on speakers, right? And I'm sure they thought it was, like, hilarious. It was supposed to be this funny scene of, like, all the guys, like, fighting over the gas can, playing the chicken dance music, turned into this horrific, like, 80s like horror movie of me just like taking people and launching them into the air and like angle slamming them and like spine bustering them over and over again, right? And at one point, like the leader of the blast group, his name was Davis. He was actually my boss's younger brother. I don't know who this guy thought he was. Like, he thought he was gonna be some sort of hero, right? So he charged at me, and I just dug in and flipped him through the air, just dropped him. And eventually I look down, and he's like, go to the kid who has the gas can to go across the finish line to end it. So, like, I got a couple pictures, and I know that, like, this isn't, like, ideal for, it'll be quick, though, just to show you guys. So this is the first one here. You can see us taking off. I don't know if Slack's going to allow it to happen. Oh, yeah, okay, it is. So,
okay, yeah, I see.
And you can kind of see me in the background. You can see like these guys, like they're not like the type, you know?
Yeah. They're pretty thin looking guys, yeah.
And then here is this picture where you can see them fighting over the gas can. One person that I had taken out already, and me just coming in the distance after them. In my tap out shirt.
Oh my god.
And then you can see the carnage that was the final, like, look.
The thing is, you can see in this photo, like, how much larger you are than these guys.
All these guys on the ground, the corpses around me.
I can hear your footsteps in this photo.
Like, there's like 4 or 5 guys just like around. I took all those guys out, by the way. What? I was never invited back.
What? How?
Really? Really?
I was never invited back, and it came out. They were like quite angry about this. Like they were pretty upset about me just like going in there and being like super aggressive and physical and just dropping all these guys. And I was like, "This is what you asked for, though." Like,
how did your relationship go? Are you still with her?
No, we broke up like a year later.
I like that you started the story off by saying these aren't your Midwestern wrestler Christians.
Yeah.
And you immediately set up like they'd already determined a winner. It was a farce, which like sounds to me not all that different than a wrestling match. Like,
yeah, true.
Was it supposed to be like fake? Like, were they supposed to? Like, was it fake fighting that they, or are you saying it was still real fighting?
No, it was still supposed to be like real. They were just like, but like the winner was predetermined. So like they were like tackling each other and just like like roughhousing a little bit.
Right.
But I wasn't messing around, man. Like I was like, screw all these kids. I'm gonna make them. They're gonna get learnt today.
Well, I gotta be honest. This is like slightly horrifying.
Script.
Like, I wasn't off script though. Like they were. This was the whole plan. They were like, they weren't ready for someone like me who was just like, I had no willingness for these guys' health. I was like, dude. When I tell you, I was actually performing pro wrestling moves on these guys. I was like grabbing their arms and like angle slamming them through the air, and like I'm like grabbing them and like hip tossing them. And yeah, I was never invited back.
This really sounds like if Friday the 13th were about you.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a horror scene. Like when you see me running after these guys in this photo, and I'm like hauling after them. They're all like smiling in the photo, right? And I'm like about to just decimate this kid in the red hoodie in front of me.
So it's like
there was no rules either. Like you could blindside buddy, you could jump with their legs, just no punching.
Oh my god, this is like horrifying to me. Not that you did this, but the fact that this was like a thing that happens. It's just these kids like destroy each other over this gas can. Like, who came up with this idea?
It's weird because I don't think Pennsylvania is that different than Maine. And Austin, did you grow up down south?
Yes, yeah. I was born and raised here.
I don't think it's that different than Pennsylvania, like generally. But I don't think at any point someone would have asked either of us, like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And either one of us would have been like, oh, I committed a few hate crimes by beating up Christian virgins in the woods.
Over a gas can.
Over a gas can that someone left on top of a mountain, to impress some babes. Like, I don't think, like, the whole, like, if you give monkeys a typewriter, eventually, like, they're going to type out a Shakespeare play, just if they have infinite time. Like, I don't think we would have gotten there,
Dude, there's another one!
That has to be probably the best story that I've ever heard come out of your mouth, Seth. That is absolutely hilarious.
No, so I gotta make it clear. This wasn't like a conversion camp. Like, these were kids that already knew each other. They'd grown up together pretty much, right? Like they had grown up with camaraderie and like super Christian. And they weren't competitive.
They all liked each other. They just didn't know me, and that was the problem.
You stepped in. You stepped in. You were like, I don't care about these stupid kids.
Yeah, when you throw,
I don't care if they go to the hospital.
When you throw like an angle like me in there, like a variable, things get real bad real quick.
Yeah, man, you were like the character that shows up in season 4, and we're just like, who the hell is this guy?
Everyone was like, this isn't fun anymore. we won out. All right, continue, Austin.
I was just going to say, so next year, what I'm hearing is that we should do this, except like at the top of the hill, there's like a copy of Cyberpunk or something, like the worst game you can think of to like fight over and physically beat the crap out of each other over.
Dude, I'm so sure they never did that again. I'm so sure they never made that mistake again.
Well, those kids probably never left the hospital, Seth. They're probably still there.
Probably pissing in bags somewhere in Eastern
I was ruthless. These kids probably wake up in cold sweats thinking of the day they crossed Seth's lake house. I mean,
what video game do you think we'd have to put at the top of a mountain to bring out the worst side of Elijah?
Lollipop Chainsaw.
No, but like I'm thinking like a Spider or something on PlayStation 1, like some like random super low print PlayStation 1 game that we've never heard Elijah talk about before, but is one of his 5 favorite games he's never played. I'm just like, what game would it have to be on top of the mountain to just make him fierce? Just bring out, make him the true loco lizard man.
What will make him go loco?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but you can add 2011 Camp Sus with Seth to like your list of mythical figures.
Did that Seth beat up anyone in the video game industry?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
I'm imagining like the lore in the years following this of like these kids sitting around the campfire and they're like, you guys remember that one year that one kid nobody knew showed up and beat the crap out of all of us, and then he never showed up.
They probably they talk about you the way the Covenant talk about Master Chief, like, oh, the demon.
Dude, like this picture is just so funny to me though, because like they're all smiling. There's one guy that's already felt the wrath, but they're all smiling, just kind of like joking around. There's 2 guys pulling on the gas can. One's guy, Davis, the guy I was telling you about, the leader. He's wearing a shirt that says Moose Pulling Team on it, whatever that means. And I have just like I have a tap out sweatshirt on, and I am just moving behind them, ready to just inflict carnage.
Yeah, of course they're smiling. They haven't been run over by a rhino yet.
Yeah, dude. They had no idea.
They didn't turn around and see what was behind them.
They were not prepared. And I'm just in the next picture. I'm just smiling at all the corpses in front of me.
Yeah, no, you sociopath.
Oh man, I wish that we could share these. This is hilarious.
This is the greatest day of my life.
Have you just seen Fight Club for the first time, like the weekend before?
No, that wasn't the case. I was just super amped that I could just no restrictions.
Turns out John Wick is actually based on this camp that Seth showed up at.
This one kid laying on his back like he's in serious pain. He's like, oh my god. I just got spine bustered.
Lord.
Be right back, guys. I got to go piss blood.
Yeah.
Man,
So how about the games we've been playing this week?
Yeah, how about that? You guys been beating any 15-year-olds up in any video games recently?
I think I have, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, topical.
I played this last week, and then I played some more this week. I just haven't had that much time for games between work and dogs and fixing up the house. But man, I downloaded Splitgate, which is like the free-to-play first-person shooter from 1047 Games, and it's the game that's like if Halo and Portal had a baby, where it plays just like Halo, except you also have like a portal gun that you can like set up on certain surfaces throughout the map. That game is great. Like, that game is legit fun.
I've heard it's really good.
And I'm a god at it. I'm going to add the caveat that I haven't hit level 20, so you're just playing casual matches until you hit level 20. But it's like the most unabashed Halo clone I've seen in 10 years. Like, it is borderline criminal how much they lifted from Halo. It's literally Halo with slight skin swaps, like palette swaps on stuff.
Why do you say that?
Like, the gun loadouts are the same, the modes are the same, the narrator is functionally the same. Like, there's just so much Halo DNA throughout this game that it feels like... Did you guys ever see that movie Coming to America?
No.
God, children. All right. Trying to think of like a better equivalent. Okay, you guys buy a lot of video games online and stuff. Have you ever seen like one of those like handheld game systems that looks exactly like a PlayStation Vita, but it's like 600 games in one, and it has the exact same like chassis body as a Vita? And you're like, well, that doesn't seem right, but it's $30, or like, some super just dirt cheap equivalent. Like, it feels like that, where it's just like everything is like borderline 1-to-1. It's just slightly different. And then but you get it, and it's just like, oh man, this game plays great. Like, this plays just like Halo. What
are you playing on?
Super fun. I'm playing on PlayStation 5, and I think they're gonna open up crossplay soon. At least that was like something I saw on Twitter. But like, this game is just like, it came out, and then like there was some big announcement about it, and then it just like exploded. Like, they were having server issues like the day the game released, because I think they said they were expecting like 12,000 people to play, and it was like 300,000 people were playing, 200,000 people were playing, like some ridiculous number, many orders of magnitude more than what they were expecting for their server load.
Right.
And I think it deserves it. Like, it's still in beta right now. Like, you see beta everywhere where you're playing. But they've got like a battle pass system set up. It's just 4v4. I had my first quad kill today, right before we recorded. Like, the game's super fun, and it is just Halo that you can play on PlayStation.
This is interesting you say that, because I've actually thought about this week about Halo and Call of Duty. Do you think it's possible the developers were fans of Halo and they were tired of having bad Halos, so they were like, we'll just make our own? Is that kind of what it feels like?
I guess, yeah, but also, like, I don't think they're taking too many risks with this game. Like, I actually thought the Halo 5 multiplayer was awesome. Like, Warzones, or whatever that mode is called, is awesome. It's super fun. For me personally, like, Halo's just been kind of a letdown story-wise, but like, I really liked Halo 4. I understand that not a lot of people did, but I was like, oh, this could go an interesting place. And then Halo 5, I'm like, well, this isn't interesting. Like, you guys kind of dropped the ball here. And I think, I don't want to speak for every Halo fan, but I think that's like where Halo's sort of been falling short lately. They just completely cut out story, from what I can tell. There might be a campaign, I have no idea, because it's still in beta, but man, it's just like no fuss multiplayer. It's just awesome. You just jump into a queue, and then you just keep going until you decide to leave the lobby. And it's so much fun, and it's free to play.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I had heard some stuff about it. I didn't realize it was free to play, so I need to download it. But I just think the idea of kind of combining like the Portal mechanics with a shooter are fascinating.
Yeah, I think that is really cool.
It's cool. You can like shoot through your own portal to like kill someone. Like, you can like set up traps like around corners and stuff. You can throw grenades to close enemy portals. I don't think you can go into enemy portals. I haven't tried. That is one thing I've noticed, that the portal part is kind of minimally used, at least on PlayStation. And I think it's probably because there's no Halo on PlayStation, and there's like nothing that really, like, the closest game I think that felt like Halo was on PlayStation 3 called Section 8. You guys remember that game? Section 8 Prejudice, I think, was like the big expansion they had.
I never played it.
I thought that game was dope. That game was a lot of fun. Again, because it was like the closest thing to Halo on PlayStation. This is much closer. God, it's great. But like the playlist is like shoddy snipers. I'm like, where'd they think of that? You know, like that they have a mode called SWAT, which is just like headshots or like automatic kills.
Wow.
And like I was just playing through that, and like I had 27 kills, like out of like 50 for our team, because like no one else figured out that headshots just like were an instant kill.
That's awesome.
God, it feels so good. I think this game is going to get murdered whenever Halo Infinite comes out, at least on Xbox. But like I can see it kind of thriving still on PlayStation, just because there's nothing really like it. Destiny is close, but Destiny feels a little too fast, and like this is a little bit slower, a little bit more arcadey, I guess.
Yeah.
Piggybacking off of George, do you guys think there is a copyright infringement issue in video games? Because, for instance, one of the things I thought about this week was Halo and Call of Duty, and how they set the standard for mechanics. First Halo, and then Call of Duty kind of iterated on it. They set the standard for the mechanics that we still use today. And every shooter that came after Call of Duty copied those mechanics almost
to the letter.
Line for line. To the letter, yes. And I feel like you couldn't get away with that sort of thing in any other industry. Whereas, you know, you look at the things that like Call of Duty and Halo introduced, like, you know, trigger fire and regenerative shields and, you know, the just all the mechanics, they all felt the same after that in every other shooter.
It's just,
that is kind of interesting.
It is interesting. I gotta think about this sometimes, where it's just like, why do we only have 2 guns? You know, like I find that a little frustrating. And like I understand it's because of like actual hardware limitations on Xbox, right? Like that was why they did it in Halo. And I think they were also going for realism, where it's just like, you could probably only hold 2. Like these are big alien guns. You can only hold 2 of these at once. Which like I guess I understand, but like I don't know, man. It was pretty fun on like the original Wolfenstein and the original Doom, and like I could literally just cycle through the numbers and just pistol, shotgun, machine gun, flamethrower. Like you just like go through like your entire number key.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're probably right, Seth. I also think there's like a greater just intellectual property challenge outside of video games, but I think you're totally right that it is really limiting when it comes to video games. I think in some ways it's a good thing. Like I think I like the universal controls, where, you know, square or X or whatever the equivalent is, like always reload, and like circle or B or whatever the equivalent is, like always crouch. But at the same time, it's like, if we just decide that those are the controls, like how are we sure that that's like the best iteration of that? So like that part, I think it's fine, but like I have no idea if it's stagnant just because it's been that way for so long, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say too, because I mean, it's been like that for almost 20 years now, for the most part. Most of like if we're just kind of focusing on the shooter example, I mean, control wise, things haven't really changed. So, yeah, it's an interesting question though. I mean, I kind of agree. I think it's fascinating to kind of look at the shooters we have today and just kind of consciously think, okay, all of these basically play exactly the same. I mean, there might be slightly different mechanics, but gameplay wise, like for the most part, the core mechanics between most shooters are identical and control.
Well, see, like the way I was thinking about it was like, if a movie was shot the same way as another movie, right? Almost the same exact scenes. Maybe the characters were changed, music was changed. It would be a significant issue, right? I mean,
no, because Point Break and Fast and Furious 1 are like beat for beat the same exact movie.
I've never seen Point Break.
It'll change your GD life. The movie's incredible. But they are beat for beat the same exact movie. And so I don't know if it's like a generational thing where it's just like, okay, like all of a sudden Point Break became an old movie, which is why 12 years later they made Fast and Furious. And they sort of like recontextualized like that drama for like a new audience. I'm being 110% serious. I think both movies are great. I think the first Fast and Furious movie is the best in the franchise. But I do think it's interesting because like I think that's why, like, because of again, stagnation sounds like such a strong word, but like, I think that's why I give so many other games a chance. Like, I think that's why, like, I dove head over heels into Fall Guys when that game came out, because I was so intrigued by the idea of having a multiplayer experience that didn't revolve around me aiming down sights, you know? And like, I think that's why Fortnite is starting to sort of splinter off a little bit. Like, there's still like the competitive shooter nature of it, but like, so much of Fortnite isn't even about winning the round anymore. You know, it's like, it's about exploring the world. And so I think for all the problems of like games sort of iterating on like the same microcosmal mechanic ideas that like one game had 20 years ago, I think it does sort of give people the push to try out other games.
No, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point because I mean, at some point things get stale.
Yeah.
For anybody. I mean, I look back at the past 5 years or so, and a good example for me is like after Titanfall 2, Black Ops 3 era, like I kind of completely dipped off of like multiplayer shooters. Because I had been so hooked on them from like PS3 gen through most of the PS4 gen. And so it's just an interesting concept. And like I mean, you look at stuff like Hades, which kind of took the world by storm last year, and you know, that's not like a super, I guess, I don't know what the word is. Like, it's not a common game. It's pretty original. The mechanics are pretty original, and so stuff like that I think does pretty well these days.
Sure.
But
well, I guess, do you guys think Halo should be credited, maybe monetarily, with the birth and success of the first-person shooter genre that really exploded after it? Because without Halo, that whole genre is completely different, and they definitely did copy and take the things that Halo did great that made that genre explode.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know if I have an answer for that because it's I don't know.
It's tough because like we all like comic books here, and like there's always like you know, X-Men created by, you know, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby there. And there was like other great teams to like work on the books. But at the same time, like, I don't know, like, do you have to reference like how, like, X-Men Days of Future Past, like, if that was like the comic book that made you want to write comic books as the author, like, do you feel a need to like reference that every time you write something like that? You know, like if you're creating something and you were inspired by something else, like how often do you feel the need, I guess, to like say, oh, I'm nothing without this thing that came before? Because like there are other games that I think do stuff way better. Like I love Halo, but like I think Halo is like slow as hell now. You know, like the game that like really captured me was actually like Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. Like that game was just like so fast and so twitchy. Like, and ironically, that game felt more like not like an arena shooter, but like closer to an arena shooter than like the modern day FPSs of the time. I don't know, it's super interesting, and like I love the idea of like the etymology of games, like tracing the history of certain design choices or like mechanics or whatever. I think that stuff's like fascinating, and I do think it's like important to know, but also at the same time, like I don't know, I think someone should get credit for taking that and then like taking it to its next logical conclusion, because it's not like Halo hasn't had opportunity to do things differently, you know?
Right. That's all I had. Sorry for hijacking the
conversation. No, that's awesome. I love these like esoteric conversations about. I think that's way more interesting than, yeah, gun feels good, headshot mode fun. Like I think that's like a much more valuable conversation to have than it sounds good, bullets hard, you know? Like,
George, was that really all you had been playing this week, or did you have
really all I've been playing this week? A little bit of Skyward Sword. Man, that game sucks with motion controls. Don't play it with motion controls.
like every week, George says the same thing. I hate this game without motion controls.
It's so frustrating. Like I'm calibrating my Switch Joy-Cons less than I was my Wiimote, but man, still not great. Still not great at all.
Seth, have you been playing anything fun this past week?
Yeah, dude. I've been playing Trails of Cold Steel 3. I'm trying to finish that before Tales of Aurora. I hate this. I've been playing Trails of Cold Steel 3. I'm trying to finish that before Tales of Arise comes out. We got Trails and Tales series.
Trails of Tales. That's what the crossover is going to be called.
We've got Tales of Arise coming out, and then next year Trails of Azure coming out. And I'm just like, yeah, these.
Can you guys talk? Can you guys talk and make sure that your stuff doesn't sound 80% the same next time?
Yeah, God. Yeah, dude. Trails of Cold Steel 3 is really, really fun. It's really good. The story's awesome. The gameplay's awesome. It's probably one of the most in-depth RPGs I've played in a long time. Still can't recommend the series. I refuse to recommend anybody play the series because you have to sift through a first game that's 80 hours of nonsense. So I'm having a blast with it. I'm glad I stuck with it. But don't do the same unless you have a ton of time to waste. You know? And then the other thing I want to talk about was I upgraded my phone 2 days ago.
Oh.
I got the S21 Ultra. It's huge. It's massive. Nice. And also, Austin, you sent me the link that xCloud was finally working. So I hooked up my Razer Kishi. It barely fits, by the way. It's stretched to its limit on this phone. And, dude, xCloud with Game Pass is an absolute game changer. I mean, I was really impressed with like Steam Link and Stadia. Not so much remote play, but it works in a pinch. But xCloud is the first time I've played a game remotely and not noticed the input lag.
Yeah.
And I'm playing it. I was actually playing Halo 4. I started up earlier today, and I was like, dude, this feels incredible. And I'm playing it, and I'm like, I'm trying to like mess with it a little bit and like try and force myself to notice the input lag, and I couldn't. And it's made me kind of realize, I'm like, oh, this is bad news for Nintendo, dude, because xCloud plays so well that I think it makes, except for like the exclusive games, it makes the Switch a little obsolete, you know? And I'm like, man, Xbox really won me over this generation. Like a year ago, I was like, yo, I mean, I'm never going to play an Xbox. I'm never going to be an Xbox fan. Because I love Sony so much, and Xbox just did all the right things to the point where I'm like, is Xbox just like throwing tons of money into syncing PlayStation and Nintendo? They might be. Because, I mean, Game Pass is so unprofitable. You have to imagine. I mean, like, there's so many games on it, dude. Hades just came out this week. MLB The Show's on it. I was playing Forza Horizon on my phone earlier. That worked great. So the problem I had with Steam Link before, where it's like, hey, I wouldn't recommend like, high intensity shooters and like racing games. That doesn't exist with xCloud. I don't know how Microsoft pulls it off. My brain is actually not able to wrap around the latency, but it works great, man. And I recommend anybody get Game Pass and try out the Game Pass app on Android.
Wi-Fi or LTE?
I was on Wi-Fi at the time.
Sorry, Austin.
Well, I was just going to say the thing is too with Game Pass is like, I know it's a little different because I don't think you can necessarily buy xCloud games, right? Isn't it like limited to what's in the Game Pass library?
Yes.
So I guess on that level, it's a little more limited, but still at the same time, it's like, as long as you have an internet connection, you have all those games at your fingertips.
Yes.
Unlike Stadia, where you still have to buy the games, or like you said with Steam Link, where your PC has to be on. And
yes,
it's fascinating. I haven't tried it yet because I'm actually game sharing Elijah's Game Pass right now. Mm-hmm. But I've been thinking about just getting my own Game Pass subscription so I can use it. Because I mean, I honestly would probably get, like you said, a Razer Kishi and use that when I'm laying in bed at night or whatever, and just kind of play it because, I mean, exactly what you said. I've heard phenomenal things about xCloud compared to Stadia.
It's crazy, man. I'm definitely gonna like cancel my Stadia subscription because I don't really like Stadia that much, and I think the games are like way overpriced. But I mean, I'm just looking at the game list here on Game Pass, like the cloud version of it. We've got stuff like Code Vein, Control, Crackdown 3.
On mine, I just downloaded Raji and Ancient Epic, which is like a small little indie game that I want to try out, like isometric third person action game that looks fun.
Yeah, dude. I mean, Game Pass is crazy, super good.
It's interesting. A couple things. I think you're totally right. Like I think this is the future. I don't know if they're trying to sync PlayStation. Like I assume that's like the ultimate goal because like why wouldn't it be? But I think they were like probably embarrassed because like I think the reason so many different like streaming services cropped up was because Microsoft looked weak because of last gen, right? Like, slouchy sales, like not really like a first party presence even on the platform, like it really just seemed like a Blu-ray player that also could play games,
Right.
And like this is absolutely the future, and like I know it's better, but like I kind of miss, like it's just such a boring way to do it, like, and I'm just looking back on it and like this was so impractical. And in hindsight, it's so stupid. But man, like just the Game Boy Advance with like the e-card reader and the fact that you could like swipe a card and like play Donkey Kong, like so dumb, so impractical, so ridiculous. But man, there was just something like oddly cool about it too. Like that was like the idea of the future. And like obviously this is a better version of the future. But man, it does take a little bit of the romance, but then also like it makes you realize like why would I spend so much money on a box if I can just do this? Like
exactly.
I'll buy a $70 controller, sure, and then a mount, or like what's that thing called that like you literally just like mount on the sides of your phone? I forget.
That's what I was talking about, the Razer Kishi.
Yeah,
it's a great controller.
Yeah, and so it's just like why would I do that? Like just that, and then just sub to it. Like that is probably the way to go, to be completely honest. Yep. Like we were talking about comic books before we even recorded. It's just like, I don't know how much longer I can like justify buying single issues anymore. Like something's got to change. Like they didn't change. I changed. They didn't change with me. So like something's got to go. And the fact that Xbox is taking the steps forward is great. As soon as PlayStation includes PlayStation Now in PlayStation Plus, I think all of a sudden people are going to be like, oh, they really fixed PlayStation Now. And it's like, no, man, it's actually been really good for like 2 years. You just never got it. Because why would you? It's a separate subscription. Like you don't need it to play games online. And the second it's included, I swear to God, people are going to have their minds blown. Because like every PlayStation 4 game can be downloaded to your PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. Like it is functionally the same, but there's more options, I guess, for older games, just like through streaming. So I'm waiting for that conversation to happen. I'm really excited for that George was right moment.
I will say, talking about that, though, it's interesting to think that PlayStation Now has been around for so long at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been around since, like...
There's so many games. There's so many more games on PlayStation Now than Xbox Game Pass, too. It's ridiculous. Yeah. There's so, like, by a factor of, like 3 or 4. Like, there's hundreds of games more on PlayStation Now.
Yeah.
They can't market it for crap. Like, Xbox is kicking its ass just in terms of, like, how simple it is, where it's just, like, Xbox Live Gold with Game Pass. Like, it's just like, it's all there. It's one thing to buy, and it's like a little bit more expensive than the other thing without the thing was. So it's like, oh, for $5 more, I can get this for a month. Why wouldn't I? Like, they just made it like too easy to ignore. And PlayStation is just like, well, actually, it's like 2 completely different services, and we feel like we want to offer value to the consumer by giving them the power of choice. It's like, no, man, shut up. Just charge $5 more for it a month and just like roll it in. Like, just do it. Like, I swear to God.
Also, we're going to not tell our consumers it exists.
Yeah, so. Yeah. It occasionally pops up like on your desktop or whatever it's called, like your home screen on PlayStation, and then everyone's just like, again, and then they delete it without checking it out.
Well, so it seems like, and the rumor keeps circulating around, that PlayStation is going to include like some sort of anime subscription service and PlayStation Now into PlayStation Plus, and for a higher premium price. Because Sony just bought Crunchyroll, which I don't really know how I feel about, like Sony owning all of the anime in the West, but
they have like the anime monopoly now.
Yeah, especially because anime's already been kind of like monopolized by like voice actors and
Austin, please, Animopoly.
What?
They have the Animopoly.
Yeah, sorry, I portmanteaued it. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. So I don't really know how I feel about that, but I don't know, dude. To me, I feel like Microsoft sat down and they're like, all right, PlayStation's feeding us our lunch. What separates us? What can we do better than them? And someone's like, we have a lot more money. Can we just do that? And Microsoft's like, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's just like,
Throw it.
let's take a loss on Game Pass. Let's spend a crap load of money on Bethesda. Let's let's buy every studio in the industry.
It's so tough though, man. Like, I keep thinking about like the Bethesda purchase, and it's like, yeah, that was like calculated genius right there. But also, it was $7 billion. Like, that's like that's such a large number. It's like abstract. Like, that number is higher than the GDP of some countries. Like, that's like ridiculous that they were able to outspend an entire country's worth of production in a year.
You gotta imagine
like, one company in Maryland run by the biggest freaking dorks ever. Like, it's just insane.
You gotta imagine Bethesda was probably like, yeah, you can buy us for $7 billion.
Yeah,
and they were like, okay. What? Yeah,
like, should we have said 11? Like,
yeah, exactly. Then the last thing I've been playing, of course, Final Fantasy 14. I just want to say before I move on, I feel so bad and awful because I've been watching these like really sad World of Warcraft videos. I feel awful for the WoW community right now, man, because they finally realized after 10 years of just being on constantly that like there's a better alternative and they've wasted their time. And I relate to that because, dude, by the time me and Austin started podcasting together 10 years ago, I had already been playing WoW for 6 years, right? And I'd been playing WoW like pretty hardcore at that point, and I played WoW on and off casually up until like last year, until I was like, you know what, nah, I'm done. And I just pretty much moved over to Final Fantasy full time. I guess that was 2 years ago.
It's been all downhill since Mist of Pandaria, right?
But it's been all downhill for me since Cataclysm, really. And these guys, I'm just watching like all these like highlight videos, and they're just realizing and like going over how good it used to be and what the game's turned into now. And now with like the Blizzard lawsuit and like Asmongold switching over to Final Fantasy 14, all these people just started dumping the game and switching over. And I can't imagine being like a WoW content creator right now and being like, I just wasted. Because here's the other thing too, is that there's a lot of people that really invested in the World of Warcraft story, and they butchered that too. Like not just butchered it, but like took the dog outside and like iced it. You know what I'm saying? Like they really like ruined World of Warcraft's story.
They took him to the gas can camp and Seth them.
Yeah, exactly.
Just unleash the Seth.
They fed him to 2012 Seth.
Oh my god! Oh my god! You're the Rancor of this Christian camp.
Yeah. I just feel really bad for these guys, man, because like World of Warcraft team Blizzard, they really screwed all the fans over. And I mean, there is a better alternative in Final Fantasy, but I can sympathize with them being like, wow, I just wasted 15 years of my life in this game that is essentially they've ruined it now. It's trash. I can never go back to the old one. I feel bad for those guys.
The closest I've ever heard someone talk about that is like my brother talking about the Boston Red Sox. Like, I love Boston sports teams. My brother loves both the Red Sox and the Celtics probably about as much, if not more, than like I love the Patriots. I just like football the most. And he hasn't watched a Red Sox game in 2 years because of the Red Sox trading away Mookie Betts, who like was a player we were expecting to watch for like the next 15 years, like a generational talent that like the Red Sox sort of like lucked into. And they traded him away because they were like worried about like the salary cap and like going over the luxury tax and like paying too much money or whatever. And so my brother, who's watched 80% of Red Sox games for his entire life, he's 38, he's just not a Red Sox fan anymore. Like, he felt so burned by their decision, like a year after they won the World Series. It was like, you guys just like, you did everything you've been trying to do for the last 8 years since the last time you won. And he did it, and he just traded away this once in a lifetime, but like this like fantastic player is going to be loved forever, you know? and like was great for the city and all this stuff. And like they just like completely burned like one of their best fans they've ever had, you know? And so like for Blizzard to go from 60 to 0 like that is just like insane.
But see, the thing is that it hasn't been that fast either. It's been like they've been just crapping down the mouths of WoW fans for 10 years, and everyone knew it. Like, no one complained about their own game more than World of Warcraft fans. And they were like, but, you know, it's still WoW. It's still our go-to game. You know, it's still our boy. And it just kept happening and happening and happening. You know, like, we got, like, Mr. Pandaria, and then Warlords of Draenor, and Legion, and, you know, Battle for Azeroth, which was, like, the really bad one. That's when it started really going downhill. And then Shadowlands came out, and it's just terrible. And it's like, all of a sudden, everyone's like, well, those guys over there seem like they're having a lot of fun. So we're going to go over there. And then more people started latching on. And now you've got, like, this broken community of WoW players. Oh, and on top of that, our dev team is a bunch of, like, predators. And it's like, wow, okay, our game sucks now. And we just all realized it. So it's like, you're not going from 60 to 0. You go from 60 to 50 to 40 to 30. And then you're like, oh, we're moving pretty slow, aren't we?
Sorry, I don't play MMOs. So from the outside, it seemed like it was pretty, like, within the past year is, like, when the salt sort of, like, just overtook the complete taste. What's insane to me is just, think of all the MMOs that were, like, just completely squashed, right? Mm-hmm. Just, like, could not break through the World of Warcraft bubble. And it's like, they were trying to do something different, and because they were too different from WoW, they failed. And, like, do you think people, like, because Final Fantasy is still going strong, I guess Elder Scrolls Online is still going strong. But, man, do you think people have, like, buyer's remorse for not giving, like, WildStar more of a chance, you know? Like,
I see specifically a lot of WildStar about WildStar, but I saw a really great quote. You know, all these games came out and they were quoted as being like the next WoW killer. You know, everyone would want to be a WoW killer. And I forget who wrote it, but they were like, Final Fantasy didn't have to kill WoW; it had to wait for WoW to kill itself. You know, and that was when I read that, I was like, oh, it's so right. Like, WoW just took all the wrong steps, and if they had turned it around at any point, they would have come back. But I think it's too late now, man. I think people are sick of the nonsense, time wasting mechanics in the game. I think people are sick of the crappy graphics, sick of like the awful animations, the weird character designs, the awful story choices. Like, everything has gone wrong for that game because of the development team. Oh, and by the way, like, the dev team is super toxic towards their fans. Like, do we not, like, people forget, people were really upset about Diablo Immortal, and they were like making fun of the fans on stage at BlizzCon. You know,
I get that though, because like, what's that Henry Ford quote that like, if you ask people what they wanted before the car, they would have just said a faster horse. Like I understand that to a degree. I don't think you need to antagonize your fans. I don't think you need to like be an outright, but like, there's a difference between following a trend and setting a trend. And I feel like I understand like that's not at all what you were saying, but like I'm defending them a little bit. I'm not like letting them get away with being outright douchebags to their community, which it sounds like they were. Also based on some random articles I've read, I'm like, wow, that's a crappy thing to say. But at the same time, like, I think you need to like let the creative people like at least have a chance before.
At one BlizzCon, a girl went up on a mic and she's like, "Hey, so when are we gonna get some girls in the game that don't like walk out of Victoria's Secret catalog?" And the dude was like, "Well, what catalog would you like them to walk out of?"
I saw that video. It was so hard to watch. It's just like, all right, fine, not Victoria's Secret. Which catalog then?
Yeah, it's like, oh god, these guys are the worst of the worst, and they act like it, and they just, I can't. I don't want to say like I'm glad to see them go down in flames, but like I'm kind of glad to see them go down in flames too.
It's like, it's horrendous to hear that though, because like I didn't know any of that. I mean, I've never kept up with WoW at all, but it's just. It's horrible by comparison, because you look at Final Fantasy 14 and Yoshi P and their dev team, and they're like the most receptive group of people. I mean, basically any complaint that has ever been brought against Final Fantasy 14, they've changed. They've changed to help the community and to make it a better game. And dude, it's just kind of horrible by comparison.
This pair of leggings in the game that were from Nier Automata. It was the 2B leggings, and the people liked how when you put these leggings on, it made your character's butt more round and like more defined. And then they patched it out because it was technically a glitch, and people were like, "Yo, put it back in. We liked that." And 2 weeks it was patched back in. They fixed it immediately. And I was just like, it was like one of the things, the Final Fantasy devs like really care about what their community has to say. Yeah. Whereas Blizzard's just like, no, we're going to tell you what you want, and you're going to like it. And people, I think, got sick of that energy because, World of Warcraft does have all these mechanics that are just like meant specifically to keep you engaged longer in the game that are not fun, that make you log in every single day to do things that you're not interested in, but you do it because you're so attached to this game, and now people are finally breaking that attachment, and they're making all these videos about it, and it's really sad to see. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry, I know I went on for like 20 minutes.
I did want to talk quickly about a game that Seth, you and I played, and we played it with Coach and then friend of the show, Ray Apollo, on our Oculus Quest devices, which is it's called Demio, and it's kind of, Seth, you probably know a better comparison than me because I didn't really know it. To me, it was kind of like Fire Emblem, like it's a strategy RPG kind of type thing. I don't know if there's something better.
It's a tabletop. So to set the stage, it is a VR game that is set up like a tabletop game.
Right.
So it's a 4-player co-op game, and you set up in the VR room. You're in a basement, and you're playing a tabletop game,
like a physical tabletop game. Yeah,
it is it's much less Dungeons and Dragons because it's not that deep. It's more, I would say, it's very identical to the game Munchkins. If anyone's played Munchkins, it's like a very light RPG intro game where you go through the dungeon, you have set characters, there's 4 characters to choose from, and you get abilities in card forms, and you can use those abilities. It was a blast. We had a lot of fun playing it. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. And I think the thing is for me is, I mean, it was definitely, it's pretty simplistic. I mean, you're for sure right about that. Basically, the way it works is, like you said, you can kind of move your character and you choose a class, and you get kind of, I guess it was cards in the game, but basically abilities that kind of refresh, and you pick up more abilities as you go on that you can use. And so it's pretty interesting. But the thing for me that, like, even though it was so simplistic, the thing that made it kind of fun is it was okay. So we played like the starting like map thing, and we lost. Like, we got demolished.
Yeah, it was extremely hard. But didn't you choose the second campaign instead of the first one, Ray said?
No, I don't know. Maybe I did. I'm not sure.
I would be interested to go back and try the first one because that was one of my criticisms of the game was, like, even in the first encounter, we barely made it out alive.
Yeah.
It was... dude, if that is the baseline difficulty for the game, it needs severely rebalanced because there was 4 of us all working in tandem together, and we barely made it out. Yeah. And that is... The game is very good, very fun. It's worth the money. I do have some criticisms, though, that I think it's, first off, too simple.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's too difficult. There's no progression system for your character. So essentially you're just going through the campaign, and your character's not leveling up or anything. And the ability cards that you get, you don't get them frequently enough to really make use of that system. Yeah,
well, I agree with all that. I either way, though, I think with all of us, it was still a blast. But no,
absolutely.
And the good thing is, though, at least it does seem like this dev team is kind of expanding on the game. Like, they just released that full second campaign for free, and so I for sure think that if we're choosing one single complaint, I think it would be the difficulty was like ridiculous. But then as well, the simplicity. Like, I do hope that maybe later on in like the third campaign or something, they add in some new elements or whatever it may be, to kind of make it a little more involved. But the thing for me that made the game fantastic is just the fact that it's like you're playing a board game with 3 other people remotely, and it feels like you're all just there having fun playing a board game together. And that to me was like the coolest thing. Because it was just kind of neat, like, to be sitting in this room and there's like a physical board there on the table. Like, it just,
You're in this really cool 80s basement.
Yeah.
It's themed very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that I got from this game is that it's a great first step into a different kind of VR genre. And dude, I would love to see like what Wizards of the Coast or the people that make some of these great CRPGs like Divinity or Pillars of Eternity could do with like technology like this and build upon it. George, you're shaking your head no.
I don't trust Wizards of the Coast to do a goddamn thing digitally. I don't trust them digitally to do anything right ever.
Well, they're making Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. Sorry. That's one thing I didn't talk about was MTG Arena. That game's a goddamn mess. I was so jealous I couldn't make it. I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to be like an alternate. We were supposed to just like swap around and do stuff. So talking more about, sorry, like how much was the game? And like, do you feel like it was like a good VR showcase? Like, because I know not everyone listening has VR. So like, let's talk a little bit about that. I'm still relatively new to VR too.
So it's $30, which is a little higher price than some other VR games. A lot of them are closer to 20, 25-ish, but I'd say it's mid-range price. The VR stuff in it, I thought was awesome. So basically the way it works is your two controllers, there are triggers on each controller, obviously on the Oculus Quest. And I think that's the only thing. You might be able to get the game on PC. I'm not sure. So maybe it's playable on Vive, but all of us were playing on Quest.
They said they were working on a 2D version to come out later.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. But the VR stuff, basically, so like I said, you're sitting in this basement type room, and the board is physically in front of you, like in real life, like you would play a board game.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference was that made it kind of neat for me for VR is you can take your triggers and hold them, and you can rotate the whole board like however you want it to be. And if you kind of hold your triggers and then pull out, it zooms in, and you can like get literally like a foot away from your character on the board and see literally the whole room, like basically in life size, and then push in and you can see like the whole board. And so
I got really excited.
Level, awesome.
I got really excited when you sent screenshots of this game because it looked to me like Dungeon Dice Monsters from like that little episode break of like Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
When they just like met that cool guy. It's just like, duel monsters for losers. Have you played this game that uses those same monsters and dice? Like that was basically, they just did that for 5 episodes and it was like the longest dumb arc ever until the 3rd season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the VR stuff I really liked because I'm glad it wasn't just like you were sitting there and you couldn't do anything, but the fact that you can rotate the board and position yourself however you want to by just kind of holding and like basically like you would hold a board and move it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I said, you can. I really like the fact that you could zoom in because I was zooming in a lot and just kind of looking at my character and seeing what was going on.
And they look really good too. The characters look really good.
The models are really, really high quality. So
that's such a cool thing though. Like I love that in games where like I think I heard someone talk about this when they were talking about Breath of the Wild about like, you know, I saw an apple in a tree and I wondered if I could shoot it out with an arrow, and it turns out I could. You know, where it's just like you try to do a thing and it just like works in the game. They're like, no, we thought of that. And so just the idea of you being able to spin a physical board, does that change the orientation for anyone else? Like, is it just just for you? Okay.
So basically, I think what the other people see, and I kind of wish it was a little different for as far as you seeing the other players. Basically, you only see like a little like this like mask thing as like the other person, and then you can kind of see their hands sometimes. I think it's like when it's the player's turn, you'll see their hands, but otherwise they're like these little kind of translucent like orbs that appear that are where the player's hands are, just so that it's not in the way for the person, you know, trying to do their turn. But I think basically if you like turn the board, all the other people will see is your you know, quote unquote goggles, that is your face kind of moving around the board essentially to reorient. So but no, I mean, I really like that stuff. And like Seth said, I hope that we see more of this stuff later on. I know that Tabletop Simulator on PC has VR support, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and I haven't tried that yet, and I'm kind of curious too. But
I was just thinking in my head, I was like, man, I really wish the creators of Divinity Original Sin were knocking on these people's door, being like, hey, let's work together and make something here, because that would be a game that would be really, really special. You know, if you could just because Divinity Original Sin has like a D&D mode where you can create your own campaign, your own characters, your own plot. But that technology of being together in the basement, it felt like a real tabletop game. Was the crazy thing. You literally picked up the dice with your hands and you were rolling it, and the dice would roll across the board, and you would see what you got. And I'm like, dude, that is so cool. This is such a cool concept. But I do have some gripes with the game. I would be really interested, like I said, to go back and do the first campaign to see if it is as hard as we were making it out to be, or maybe there was some core mechanic that we were missing with the characters and how they interact. But I definitely want to jump more into that. That was the most fun I've had with my Oculus probably since I bought it.
I think so too. I think that, I mean, honestly, that's probably been my favorite experience in VR so far, is just kind of playing that because, like I said, I mean, it felt like we were all just kind of chilling there playing a game together, and it was just pretty neat. Like the whole waiting for the dice to roll, and that's all like watching the die and whatever. I missed like a bajillion times somehow, and we were all just kind of groan and moan anytime the little skull propped up for me. And we
were so close to death that anytime anyone would miss, it was like, oh, that's a problem.
Dude, you're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah.
So, man. But no, I think the thing is, for me, George, you've got to get in on us.
I miss D&D so much, man. I haven't played in like almost a year. Like our group like disbanded, or it was earlier this year. I can't remember. Time means nothing to me anymore. But I feel like I either haven't played in 6 months or I haven't played in a year, and it's like killing me inside. I miss it so much. I miss just like the socializing, and so like I've never done multiplayer on Oculus. So like you have like the little head earbuds that go in. So I assume it's just like live time chat that's going on. Like you can just hear everyone at all times. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
So no, I mean, we've got to play it. And I think if you're out there listening and wondering if you should get the game, I mean, I think if you've got a few friends to play with, I think it's like 100% worth it.
There it is.
George is showing his Quest. He's playing it right now. He's downloading the game.
He doesn't have his controllers, but
I'm downloading.
The Quest has hand tracking, Seth. Did you know that?
Oh, I did. I do remember that now. Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
I use that sometimes when
I found my controllers.
But no, I mean,
a water bottle.
For sure, if you have like people to play with, I think it's a definite purchase on the Quest. But yeah, so well, I guess we can end it there unless somebody has anything else
it's a great show
want to talk about. So George looks like he just popped out of VR.
Oh my god! How long was I in there?
What year is it?
All right, guys. Well, thank you all for listening. As always, I'm sure you know this if you're at the very end of the show, but we're available pretty much everywhere, anywhere you get your podcast. Please share this show with your friends if you can. We appreciate kind of you sharing us around and getting the word out there about this ridiculous show that we do, and we really appreciate it. If you're listening on a podcast service where you can leave a review, also do that for us if you can. We do take questions. We didn't have any questions this week, but if you feel like sending us a question, it can be pretty much about anything. You can send it to our social media pages. Our Twitter and Instagram are both at frameskippod, and then our Facebook is facebook.com/frameskippod. You can also send your question in at the question form, bit.ly/frameskipq. George has something to say. What up, George?
Yeah, really quick off that. You just shared all the handles. That was awesome. It is free to retweet. So when this episode goes live, if you happen to see it on the feed, maybe you don't see it on the feed. Maybe you have to type in at frameskippod. Look us up, retweet us, try to get us out there. The more people listen, the more stuff we're going to try out, the more experimental we're going to get, both with the shows, both with the content we play. And that's super exciting. Also, please let us know what video game you think would have to be at the top of that mountain that would make Lizard Man a full loco Lizard Man.
And would you fight Seth in that situation? Please
let
us know.
What do you think your Apex U could beat Apex 2011 Seth? Keep in mind he was wearing a tap out shirt, hoodie.
Yeah, that was prime tap out years.
It's funny because anyone back then who wore a tap out shirt, I was either like, man, I could just like that guy up. or I was just like, I don't even want to make eye contact with that guy. It was really, it lived in the world of extremes. And Austin, I will Venmo you $5 for that F-bomb. I apologize. But yeah, just only existed on the skirts of the spectrum, only on the edge.
Well, there you go, guys. Write us in with those answers. We'd love to hear them. So thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week. See ya.
Later.